Welcome to the IkeTagon.
What's up, everybody? Another IkeTagon. No, we're not going to talk food, movies, mental health, which should be talked about a lot more, but we are back to the fights. We are being joined by Phil Dropkick or Phil the Thrill Murphy, whatever he decides, but he is the international SportsCenter anchor. That's why he's wearing a suit. I'm in between job interviews, doing these webinar interviews with Facebook and whatnot. There's a joke there that I'll tell you guys. That's where I'm wearing a suit. I'm telling you, it's not professional below the waist, but I'm sure Phil, who keeps it always professional, he's the man. Phil Dropkick Murphy. Thank you for joining me, brother. How you doing?
I love that nickname. It's a first, and just so you know, I'm wearing gym shorts under here too. So you're in good company, man. It's a warm day. I live in Connecticut. I'm not used to it being warm out. So when it does get hot and I'm moving up and downstairs, and my wife and I have a young daughter upstairs, so I'm trying to help out whenever I can. So it's a lot of movement, fewer things she can throw up on. So yeah, it's professional up here. But once you get basically below the belt, I have a pair of like basketball shorts on, and I'm not even wearing socks. So it's just, that's the speed we're going at today, dude.
Amazing, man. I was going to ask you how things obviously are going in this, the times we're in, how it affects your work and whatnot. But I have a young child on the way. Don't know the sex or the gender yet. I've been married for 3 years now. We got a baby due in December. It's a quarantine baby. I guess I've had extra time on my hands besides doing job interviews and some video gaming. But what advice would you give to a new father to be?
I would say, and this might be a little bit ironic, the advice in and of itself, I would say, don't put too much weight on any advice you receive. Everybody
I thought you were going to
who
say
I've
like
encountered,
weight, like too much from like eating or.
yeah, I mean, no, we got all kinds. Like the one piece of advice that was really helpful for us was sleep when you can. Now, my daughter sleeps really well, and we're really fortunate, for that. So we're able to kind of have a somewhat normal, sleep schedule. I'll get up for like 45 minutes at night to feed her at some point, but everybody was telling us like, oh, this is how you sleep train a baby, and this is how you feed the baby. And so much of the advice was contradicting. And what I've learned from friends of mine who have multiple kids, and maybe, someone who's listening will tell you that I'm an idiot, they're probably right, was that like every kid is different. Like when you have one baby, whatever works with him or her, if you try and when you have another, it doesn't necessarily universally translate. And so you kind of have to be flexible. So for us, my wife and I, we went in kind of expecting the unexpected. She is our first, and we were just super relaxed. And so far that's translated to her. She's a pretty relaxed baby. She sleeps well. The one time she cries, it's like, hey, dummy, you haven't fed me in 3 hours. I'm like, oh yeah. Then I feed her. And she's generally pretty happy after that. So that would be my advice. And from one December baby to a future December baby, it's a great month in which to be born.
Wow. And I like it that you're already starting her on the intermittent fasting. George St. Pierre, GSP, is a big fan of that and proponent of that. But yeah, man, you definitely have mental toughness, which you don't, I don't know, it push out that much. I saw on your ESPN profile that you hiked Mount Kilimanjaro. Obviously, fans of your work internationally and fans how I found you through the Aaron Hawani MMA Reporters, which is no more anymore. But your takes are fantastic on MMA. But obviously, we know about your working out. But when I saw that you summited a couple of other mountains, man, where does that come from? Where does that mental fortitude come from?
I mean, honestly, dude, it was a hobby that, again, my wife has made me since retire from. I was a very mediocre athlete, and I played sports, but I loved playing sports. And once I got to college, it was like, all right, I don't know if I can, be the weekend warrior type. And it just, with my career and when I needed to be working, it just wasn't conducive. So I got into weightlifting, which is a little bit more flexible. You can go lift in the morning, you can lift at night. I just built a squat rack in my garage. So yeah, well, I mean, so it's like, I built a squat rack in my garage so I could like keep my sanity for this. But the hiking thing, it was actually started as a fundraiser, a freshwater fundraiser through the church I was going to in DC.
Cool.
We hiked Kilimanjaro and Aconcagua. We paid for it all ourselves. So it was like, I paid for the trip, but then I used that as a platform to raise money to build freshwater wells in Liberia. But as far as like the toughness in it, I was too proud to stop walking, and I was around really tough people with incredible endurance. So you just keep walking up the hill. It's slow. It's one step to 3 breaths. I mean, literally the last day on Aconcagua, we hiked for 16 hours and we covered about 3 miles.
Gosh.
It's just because there's just no air, but it's the highest point in the Southern Hemisphere, highest point in the Western Hemisphere. And that's a cool thing. And when I finished that, I just turned 24 years old when I did that. And I was like, I will never do a harder thing physically in my life. But the cool thing about that is it kind of like set the bar, like, hey, if I've done that before, then if there is another challenge in the future, be it, physical, professional, whatever it is, I know that somewhere in me, I have the ability to get there. And it's usually once you can conquer the mind, you can do a lot more, with your hands or with, that's not even for like Yoel Romero putting the fear of God into me a few weeks ago. You have two hands. But yeah, it was like,
go.
Yeah, go. I almost stood up when he did that. The cool thing, he was cool after he saw me the next day, and he kind of realized he was a little bit too intense for the question. I asked him about Israel Adesanya's takedown defense, and he went there. It wasn't like I was like prodding. I think he was just in the midst of a rough part of a rough weight cut, and created a cool moment. We had some memes and gifs out of it. So
Definitely
it was a
cool,
good time.
man. And I assume that was the great Eric Jackman who put that together and
Oh, you know it.
produced that and put it out there. It was fantastic. But man, I love your modesty, just explaining how easy it is to go up down a mountain, kind of like or the way you speak is very soft, and it just comes across as like, man, I could just hike that mountain tomorrow. But take me through some of your physicality stuff, man, like working out pre-quarantine and during quarantine. What's a typical Monday to Friday, Monday to Thursday, whatever routine you're on when the gyms and maybe the sports center facilities are open or the Bristol facilities are open? And what's been the quarantine workouts?
Yeah, we do have a nice little facility at ESPN. For those who don't know the ESPN history, it started off as like this little 2-building project in September 1979, and it's grown. We call it a campus. It really is like a college campus, but it kind of took over southern Bristol to the point where it absorbed what was once a Gold's Gym. I think at some point in the 80s or 90s. And at some point in the early 2000s, like 2004, 2005, they repurposed it and refurbished it, and it's now a nice little gym. It's small, but it has everything you need. So it's my favorite price. It's free. So I work out there when it's open. It closed in early March, and it remains closed as things kind of in Connecticut
Come on, you
settle
can't
down.
sneak in there, man, for a couple of supersets.
You don't think I tried? I can't even get on campus, dude. I mean, they built me a studio in my house. Like, this is my basement. This is a TV screen right here. But yeah, I have a gym in town for when I'm not in Bristol that, pay your 25 whatever bucks it is a month. And then I live in a very mountainous area of Connecticut. So going out and jogging is nice little cardio. So I have that.
Awesome.
That's for my cardio, my running. We have crap weather here. And my wife, who was an absolute warrior with the birth of our daughter, she said for my push present, which apparently is a thing, she wanted one of the Peloton bikes. So I got her the Peloton, and I've been riding it like 95% of the time, because when it's rainy or late night or I'm on baby duty from 3 to 4 a.m. and the baby's asleep, I'll just hop on that thing. So I mix it up. And then once everything started to hit the fan with the quarantine, I ran to like a little local fitness store in town, and I bought a pretty basic squat rack. So I can squat, I can bench, and I can do some curls and things. And just like basically just to tide me over until gyms reopen here, which I think the date right now is the 20th of June. I might give that another week or two just to since I have a setup, let it see how it works out. But yeah, that's what I do. But that's because, again, I wanted to be an athlete, and that's the only thing that I could do decently well once I got into my 20s. And now it's like, all right, well, I've done all this. I like to eat a lot. I don't have the discipline to, go on some 1,600 calorie a day diet. So I gotta put it somewhere. And that's how I fill my time. So today I haven't gotten out and done anything yet. I'm kind of itching to do it. Once I finish my sports center hits in about an hour or so, I'm going to probably take off up the hill.
Itching is a good word, man. This is definitely a test of anxiety or excitement or nervousness, the times we're in, man, just to get out there. Now, for those who know, you are an international sports center anchor, and dude, you are a high-level MMA commentator. I love your takes. I feel like you should kind of be exemplified a little more, man. I'd love to see your MMA stuff. Besides, we'll get into some Conor McGregor stuff real quick, because I know you got to go. But have you dabbled in mixed martial arts, the physical part of it, testing your skills, boxing, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, anything?
I mean, dabbled is probably the right word. I boxed a little bit as a kid, and I lived in Germany for a little while.
Oh,
and
wow.
And when I was there, I lived near an American base. I don't speak German. I lived in the German economy, so I played soccer for a local team. And
I bet you know how to say beer, right? Can you say beer?
Yeah. It's easy. I know how to say beer, and I know how to say a whole list of profanities, and that's all that you needed when you were 13, 14 years old. But there wasn't a lot to do on the German base. So I'd finish school, 3 o'clock, and my dad would be working till 6. So I'd have to fill time. And I hung out with friends a little bit. And there was a gym, but you could either shoot on the basketball court or you could hit the bag. You couldn't lift weights. So I started, hitting the bag and taking boxing lessons, like kickboxing, boxing lessons there. So now I can hit the bag and not look like a doofus, right? Like I hardly consider that MMA training because I don't get hit back. And then I dabbled in wrestling a little bit from my sophomore year of high school.
Oh, wow.
But I was in Pennsylvania at that point, and in Pennsylvania, it's very high level wrestling. And if you're just trying to test the waters, that's a bad place to do it because they will whoop your backside. So that was my humbling experience in anything you can describe as elements that go into mixed martial arts. I know enough to know you just shouldn't mess with anybody, and that's why I'm a fan. And everybody who criticizes me, like, because again, in our bubble, if you have an opinion that someone doesn't like you suck, you couldn't fight him. No kidding, I couldn't fight most people. I enjoy it, and I've watched it. UFC 69 was when I fell in love with the sport. And I've watched it ever since. And it's great that ESPN affords me the opportunity now as part of my job to talk about it, primarily in an international sense, but every now and again I get to rub elbows with Ariel and Brett and those guys.
And rub elbows. You might break their elbows if you rub them too hard. I'm just kidding. Ariel and Brett, love you. But SportsCenter Anchor, I've heard John Butzgross is a kind of really good athlete. Who's the best SportsCenter Anchor athlete?
Oh, man. Well, one of my colleagues, Trevor Scales, he does a lot of international stuff with me. He does also SportsCenter on Snapchat. He was a 4-time all-conference running back at Harvard. So that's pretty good.
Wow. Did he play with Fitzpatrick? Did they cross paths?
No, he's younger than that. So he's Trev is like, I want to say he's 29. So he was recent. He graduated maybe 6 years ago. He camped a little bit with the Falcons. Then he went into to journalism. So yeah, I mean, he's the one that jumps right out at me. But a lot of those guys, are former athletes. They either played some kind of college football or high level. Like one of my other international co-host colleagues, Mark Brown, played college basketball. So it all depends on how you define athlete, right? Like if someone's a gymnast, to me, they might be the best athlete of all of us because they can do things and control their bodies in ways that I can't. Rather than if I were to kick a soccer ball, I used to play. I used to be a kicker in football, so I'm not a football player. But if you see that on my resume, you think, oh, decent athlete. Not really. So
a good stretch, a good little warm up. How far can you kick them still?
Now probably like 45. I mean, but
when I was do a challenge if I ever come to the campus.
Yeah, we could actually. I was playing just kind of like a weekend pickup game with my buddies not long ago. It was probably about a year ago, and I hit from 45 comfortably, and then 50. It was a mental thing. I mean, I've hit from 55, 60 in warm ups with no pads. Like that's not the hard part. The hard part's when you have a rush. So, the longest I've ever hit in a game is I think like 51. I say I think 51. It's 1000% 51. I'm not going to fake the humility there. Like, yes, 51 is my longest in a game. So yeah, it's but again, that was like, high school, and then that's little semi-pro in the DC area, but never beyond that. I was a soccer player, and they needed someone who could kick the ball. And I did it okay. So yeah, but like all that to say, it all depends how you define athlete. I'm not a great athlete, but many of the SportsCenter anchors are, because so many of them grew up loving sports and playing sports, and now they talk about it for a living.
Hey, that's pretty good, man. And 45, going back to the couple of weeks ago in the Northeast with the wind, man, that's pretty good. That's probably at least 50 down south. So
if you're smart, you do it with the wind at your back, right? You just turn and then you find a way to kick with the wind.
Exactly, man. We did get one MMA thing. Maybe next time, maybe in a few weeks, whenever you got time, man. I know you're a busy guy, but my last thing, I feel like this is the most important thing for all the viewers and listener, man. I just went on your profile maybe an hour ago, saw that you did This is SportsCenter commercial with Giannis. I've obviously seen the States one where, Opa. I didn't even have to hit unmute on Twitter to know what the whole routine is.
ESPN's an international melting pot of talent, so we try to make everybody feel comfortable.
Hey, Giannis. Opa!
Guys, nobody actually does that in English.
Giannis. Opa!
Great appearance by you, but what is your favorite This is SportsCenter commercial of all time? Tough question.
Wow. Man, one of my buddies and I always used to quote was, there was it's old school, and they had where they would make it so the Sports Center hosts would trash talk about the athletes, but they would like throw each other under the bus. So it had Jeff Bukaboom, who used to play in the NHL, and Evander Holyfield. And there's this iconic line in there where I think it's Brian Kenny says about Charlie Steiner. Brian Kenny goes to Evander Holyfield and he says, "Hey Evander, Charlie says you're 50th." He said, "Charlie says you're 50th." And Evander's like, "In the world?" "In Georgia." And Evander Holyfield's holding this cup and he just crushes it. And then you see the next scene, he's like, "Charlie, come on out and get your whooping." And I don't know what it is, but my buddies and I would just quote that incessantly. Like if there was like a fight and we're watching a game, it's like, "Come on out and get your whooping." And so that one pulls it, like, it has, measure of my childhood. But my favorite guy who I think is the premier SportsCenter anchor, Scott Van Pelt, because he's just so natural. I think he does a tremendous job in any of his SportsCenter commercials. So if you ever do get to ESPN campus, in our main lobby, there's a little monitor where you can scroll through and they have all the commercials archived and you can sort by anchor. And I think just as a body of work, Scott's are the best. So I would say anything with Van Pelt is a winner.
Yeah, I got to unmute it. His comedic timing is excellent, man. And my favorite says, I'm a little bit of a homer here, a Mets fan from Long Island. Like David Wright, when he's covering it, trying to hide the signs. I think he's talking with Neil Everett, man. In my opinion, Neil Everett's like the coolest anchor. And Phil the Thrill or Phil Dropkick Murphy is number 2. So no offense, brother. No offense.
It's all good, man. They had a SportsCenter anchor bracket that came out for March.
Yes.
And I had a couple people reach out.
4 seeds. I think the 4 seeds were phenomenal.
People ask me, where was I? Like, where was I? Like, I was in the play-in game and I got my doors blown off. Like, who are you? What do you mean? Like, look at the names on that list. It's just, it's humbling to be able to, be in the space. It's like, I feel like the guy who just, is a fill-in third baseman for the Yankees. And it's like, I can appreciate the history and just celebrate the ride. And wherever it goes, it's cool. Like for me, my career to me is already a win. I love what I do every day. I love what I get to do and where I get to do it. And, yeah, there really isn't a better place and a better job, in my opinion, than hosting SportsCenter.
And I appreciate that. Phil Murphy, thanks again for the time, man. And your modesty and humility is amazing. And I was going to tie this in earlier when you said that your church went on the hikes, but it doesn't have to be religion. It could be a higher energy or some faith to something. How do you feel that your religion or what you believe in has helped you be who you are today?
For me, I didn't have, so to all cards on the table, I'm an evangelical Christian. I came to faith in Jesus Christ when I was 19. And my life before that was a mess. And listen, man, I know everybody's got a story. And even me just saying that is going to be like heighten up. Like, I'm not just going to come whack you over the head with my Bible. I believe it to be true. And for me, that relationship with Christ gave me a purpose. So through dark seasons of my life, I was able to say, like, in prayer to see, okay, like this, there's more than just me out there. Right. And, if there are things that I either have to suffer or endure to advance a greater cause. Now for me, that greater cause is the gospel of Jesus Christ, but just if there are things I have to suffer and endure to advance that, then it gives purpose to suffering. And it gives purpose to hardship. And that to me was just a weight lifted because it's not about me, right? Like, if there are things that go wrong, but it's for somebody else's glory or the glory of somebody I love, then it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. So it makes it easier for me to just not think like, oh, woe is me, the world is against me. It's just, this may be a step backwards, but it could be a step backwards for 2 steps forward. So, it just kind of frees up the weight. And that's been kind of the overarching kind of approach and perspective I've had in the last 14 years. I'm 33 now. So yeah, that I would say that's probably the 45-second synopsis I can give of what that's meant to me.
Amazing, man. And at a time like this, I think it's good to, again, it could be God, it could be a higher energy, whatever you believe in, just something that could kind of pull you out of maybe struggles you're in. I believe God gives you only what you can handle, good or bad, whether it's a huge firing from a big position or a job, or it's the girl that is just enough hot for you that you don't screw it up. I think God gives you exactly what you can handle. Phil Murphy, thanks so much for the time and everything, man. Maybe next time we'll talk a little MMA. We got 2 IkeTagons and OCTAGONs behind us. Maybe we should talk MMA next time. Thank you again for the time, man. Brother.
That's the cool thing, though. We have so much more that we can talk about than just fighting, but I'm looking forward to talking fighting with you soon.
Thank you, brother.